pulled again in the third quarter. What was it like for you out there?
It's frustrating, especially, we follow the protocols. We get tested, every single day. So I don't understand the whole thing where he couldn't play, and then he came on the court, and then they took him back. It's just a lot going on. It's too much going on. It's kind of overwhelming, especially when we're in the midst of a tough game, and like these games are going to add up, especially if we're talking about playoff seeding. We're talking about positioning ourselves and to home court advantage and whatnot, and catching rhythm and all that. So I feel like I don't know. It's overwhelming. It's frustrating. Yeah.
Have you had an opportunity to message him or see where his head is at before you guys leave?
He feels the same way. Especially him already having it, and we get tested, like I said, every single day. So, and I mean, he's been negative, so I don't understand what the problem is. If that was the case, the game should have been postponed. I feel like if, we're talking about contact tracing, he was around all of us, so I don't understand why he wasn't allowed to play and then was able to play and then took back off the court. If that was the case, we should have just postponed the game. That's how I feel. But through the midst of it, it was tough. Give Toronto credit. They made shots. They played well. But yeah, it's frustrating.
Malika Andrews, ESPN.
Hey, James, in the midst of sort of all that frustration, did you find it hard to sort of refocus? Did you kind of questions going on in your head like, hey, what's going on? I want to pay attention to that? Or what was kind of the balance there of trying to be like, oh, we still have a game to play?
No, we definitely have a game to play, but we're bringing it in a huddle, and coaches drawing up the first play of the game, and, we're like, where's Kevin? And Kevin can't play. It was like, all right, cool, whatever. All right. So then we're starting the game up, and then Kevin's able to play. It's like, all right, let's go. Then Kevin can't play again. It's like, all right, come on, what are we doing? So it's just, we try to focus on the game, try to focus on possession by possession, try to, get a rhythm because we started off slow. We're not here to make excuses, but it's a lot. It's a lot.
Thank you.
Alex Schiffer, The Athletic.
James, kind of going off your last comment, did you ask at all during the game, the coaches or anything, what was going on with Kevin, or because you did have a game to play, you were just kind of going with the flow with all that, and when he was around, and when he wasn't, you asked questions later?
Of course I asked what was going on, and they said, they just said contact tracing, and I'm thinking to myself, well, if it's contact tracing, then we were all in the locker room together. That means there's no game, if he's not going to be able to play. So, that was my thought process, and once we started the game, I kind of forgot about it, and then Kevin enters the game. I'm like, well, I don't know, it must have been a confusion or a mess up or something, So we kind of we caught a rhythm. We came back, started playing well, and then he can't come back on the floor. I don't know. It was a lot. Like I said, it's overwhelming. We're not taking anything away from Toronto. They played an exceptional game. They made shots when they counted. They played scrappy basketball like we knew they were going to do. For us, we just couldn't catch a rhythm. And when we finally did in that second quarter, we started playing well, and then we just got kind of stagnant again in that second half. So, yeah.
Christian Winfield, New York Daily News.
Hey, James, does a night like tonight kind of make you look at the idea of an All-Star game or All-Star weekend or whatever any differently? I mean, a lot of guys have been voicing different opinions, so I'm wondering where you stand on the subject.
I mean, I haven't said anything publicly, but I feel the same way as some of the players as far as there's so much going on as far as we're trying to, calm a virus down, and, we're putting on an event, I don't know. I mean, I know what the reasoning is for it, but, I feel like, especially with a condensed schedule, and it feels like everything was forced upon players. It's already draining. We playing a lot of games in a week. And I feel like that was a week for us to kind of relax, be with our families, and kind of take a step back away from basketball. So, like I said, we're just in it.
That man right there has a lot on his mind.
Yeah, he used the word overwhelming a couple of times. You read the timeline. I like the way he read the timeline. He wasn't there, then he was there, then he wasn't there another time. It's interesting, too. James Harden is also thinking big picture, and he's thinking about these games catching up to you when you start playing for playoff seeding in a lot.
The Nets visit the Philadelphia 76ers. Our coverage begins at 7:30 with the pregame. Game time is set for 8 o'clock. So for Sarah Kustok, Michael Grady, and our entire Yes Network crew, this is Ryan Ruocco, Bob Frank, and what should be a very interesting postgame show starts right now.
All right, Ryan, thank you. Great to have you with us on this edition of the Brooklyn Nets post-game show. Bob Lorenz and Frank Isola with you as the Nets drop this one 123-117. Ryan said it best, a chaotic night involving just partial use of Kevin Durant.
Yeah, very bizarre. So the last 2 times Kevin Durant has played the Toronto Raptors, of course, everyone's going to remember what happened in June of 2019, him blowing out his Achilles in Game 5 of the NBA Finals. This doesn't appear to be as serious, but it's obviously a bizarre situation that unfolded here at Barclays Center with him not starting the game, entering the game, and then he was gone by the third quarter.
All right, so we'll get to the NBA statement in a minute. Let's kind of go through his night, though, and spell it out. Just as we were wrapping up the pregame show, we found out that he was not going to be able to start. This is 6:36, about an hour before tip, and he was out there getting ready, warming up.
Yeah, so at this point, it looks like Kevin Durant is going to start. However, he's ruled that he can't start the game. First time in his career, Bob, that he was going to be a backup, and he came in about 8 minutes into the first quarter. They gave him a mask because he returned to the bench, but right away Steve Nash said get in there, and Kevin Durant finally entered the game with about 4:17 to go in the first quarter.
And was able to have an impact for parts of the first and then the second quarter.
Yeah, and a lot of it, ended up being his first basket of the game on that dunk, but he did a really good job getting guys involved. He had 5 assists by halftime, and you figured he hadn't played a lot of minutes in the first half, and then here originally, everyone thought this might be his 5th foul. It was called on the floor. Steve Nash had left him in at 4 fouls. They reviewed it. They said, no, it wasn't a foul. But during that break, during the challenge, is when they told Kevin Durant that he could not play.
So you see how disappointed he is, probably shocked that for the second time, he's told that he can't play. This is what the NBA had to say. Kevin Durant has tested negative 3 times in the last 24 hours, including 2 negative PCR tests today. However, someone he had interacted with this afternoon subsequently had an inconclusive test returned shortly before the game. So Durant initially held out of the game while that result was being reviewed. Under the league's health and safety protocols, we do not require a player to be quarantined until a close contact has a confirmed positive test. Well, during the game, a positive test was returned for the person Durant interacted with this afternoon. Once that test was confirmed positive, out of an abundance of caution, Durant was removed from the game and contact tracing is underway to determine if he was in fact a close contact of the positive individual. And he asked really quickly, Frank, this is what he tweeted at 9:53 when he was sitting in the locker room.
Well, here's the thing, Bob. So if he didn't have to be quarantined, why wasn't he allowed to start the game? That's number one. So clearly there was an issue. So then now you're saying you're pulling him out by the third quarter. He now has come in contact with everyone on his team and everyone on the Toronto Raptors that played. So the whole thing doesn't seem to make any sense. We'll hear what Steve Nash says after the game. Maybe he has some more information, but this is a very bizarre situation.
And the NBA has been cautious, and you wonder when you get an inconclusive back, I get you're holding him out of the game, but then what made it change? Because the guy had a positive test, or whoever it was had a positive test
whoever
later.
He came in contact with ended up having a positive test, but it leads to the question, then why was he allowed to even go into the game with about 4 minutes to go? You're saying you're not quarantining anybody, but yet he goes into the game 4 minutes into the first quarter, and then early in the third quarter, you tell him that's it. Whoever you came in contact with had tested positive. Now we have to do contact tracing. This is after Kevin Durant had played about 19 minutes around all of his teammates and around the players on the Toronto Raptors.
And by the way, many of you may know that it was a year ago in March that he tested positive for COVID. But there's so much still to learn about COVID-19 that they have to be careful. It's not as simple as, oh, well, Kevin's had it once, he can play at will. That's not the case.
And he's already missed 4 games this season because of contact tracing. So this has to be very frustrating for Kevin Durant, who's waited so long. It was 560 days between NBA games. And when he started the season and he played so well, then all of a sudden he missed those 4 games with contact tracing. Here he is tonight. He doesn't know what's going on. He's not allowed to start the game. And you saw the disappointment when they told him he couldn't play. He had the water bottle in his hand. He threw it on the ground. just a strange night at the Barclays Center.
Yeah, and the PS to this is they're playing back-to-back games. They've got to take on Philly, and what does that mean for Durant tomorrow?
Yeah, and we were saying at halftime, when you looked at his minutes, we were thinking, you know what, there's a very good chance you might see him play 20 minutes in the second half. And he was finally starting to get his game together. You could see that the Nets were finally starting to get a rhythm. So you're telling the Nets at one point, right before this tip-off, he's out. And then in the third quarter, now Grant,